So let it be written, so let it be done. This is Tabletop Terrors. Today we're going to talk about finishing projects that are too large in scope and seem impossible. In the world of RPGs, and really anything creative that has to do with film, television, the sheer work that has to go into a minimum viable product is backbreaking to even think about. So how does one human bring their idea that they see as this grand thing to light? Especially if it's outside of your skill level, or there are facets of it that wouldn't just be able to be accomplished by working harder. Things that you literally can't do. That's kind of what we're talking about. So Jeff, tell me a little bit about the situation you're in, and then we're going to talk through, James and I are going to talk through and try to get you tangibly closer to the finish line than when this video started.
Yeah, so this topic came about less of me having something interesting to present, but more out of me needing this advice. So lately, within the last probably couple weeks or so, I've been getting much more into a couple different things. Like pixel art is one of them. Unity, the video game development engine, is another one. And some programming tied into the whole Unity thing, because you have to code a lot of that stuff as well. And like as I've been sort of just tinkering around with this stuff, just like I kind of just started this stuff on a whim. Just like I kind of feel like seeing what that whole thing is about and just kind of seeing where it goes. And then as I started sort of working on things and thinking about like ideas that I've had for RPG projects and stuff like that, like I started getting this like vision in my head of like a video game, or at least an idea for what a video game could be. And like I can see it clearly in my head, like what the sort of visual style would be, what the like gameplay would be like, what the art and stuff would be like. And like it's all right there. Like if I could just like pull it out of my brain like and into the world, it would be like a near finished video game. But there are a couple problems that are stopping me from doing that. I am not good enough at coding to make such a thing yet, and I am not good enough at art to draw any of it. So I've kind of like reached this point where it's like I have this like nagging idea that's in there, and it's like so clear like what it could be, but like I don't like have the proficiency in like the fields necessary to finish those things. And this is something that's, happened in RPGs too, where it's like you have an idea for like a monster and you can see it clearly in your head, but you can't draw. So your only hope is to like hire an artist and to try to like communicate to them, and it'll like never be exactly the same as so. But specifically in regards to like this, like I would need to be a much better artist, and I would need to be a much better programmer. And like those are not things that you can just like pull up in another tab and like look up how to do, and suddenly you can just do it. So yeah, just was curious as to your guys' thoughts. I'm sure you've had ideas for stuff that's sort of been beyond your means too, whether that's budget or skill or whatever. So yeah, what do you guys do to either work on it anyways, or just to cope with the fact that you can't, if it really truly is not within reach right now?
So I definitely have some very specific, but James, I wanted to just, how do you want to handle this? Do you want me to jump in and just try to give it a shot, or do you have something very specific? Yeah. Okay.
No, yeah, let's jump in. I think that's perfect.
So I think that there are two. These aren't the only facets, but the two facets that I want to focus on right now for you, Jeff, are continuing to learn what you can, and I'm going to explain why, and then also identifying as closely as you can what is in your head. So here's what I mean. You And this is, if you came to me and you were like, Tim, I want to hire you as a consultant. I need to get this project made. I want to do it in about a year and a half. This is what I would tell you. So the first thing is you're going to continue to learn Python or whatever other code that you can so that you can have an understanding to communicate to others. So and the truth is, you know, again, you're a client of mine, Jeff. The truth is, not in the next year are you going to get to be a good enough programmer to do what is in your head. So unless you want to wait 5 years to program this game, then we can't go that route. The route can't be Jeff learns programming. That's not the final product. Jeff needs to learn programming so that he can communicate to a great programmer. And understand the limitations. Now, on the other side, the facet that I think can be done, and you can do this free or cheap, is you need to document as much as you can the exact thing that exists in your head. So you have a Google Drive folder, and one document is called music. And even if you don't have any idea what kind of music, it's still a document that exists. And you're going to have one that is, you know, whatever the things are that you have a clear vision of. And then what you're going to do is you're going to try to find the closest thing or things that represent that exist already. So it can be an amalgamation of, I want this color scheme, but I want this art style. The idea, and I'm going to say this, it's going to sound morbid, but I want you to understand how detailed this should be. The idea would be that if you died, someone could use this and make the exact game that you had in your head. Even if it's the description of, and the description of gameplay that says, I want it to feel difficult but rewarding. If that's as far as your knowledge gets you and you don't know how to explain that, that's fine. Because here's the truth. Between you learning more about the things that you can and between you documenting, what I have learned is the absolute way to do this. Get what you have, and then you would find freelancers who could actually do this work. You find out how much it would cost, and then you would hire them to do it for you. This is exactly what Kickstarter's for. Alex Preston, the creator of Hyperlight Drifter. It's very, very cool game. He had a heart disease and some other immune problems, was holed up in a hospital bed for a lot of the time, and had the energy to work about 1 hour a day. He's an artist, so this is a different situation. He had the ability to create this banging art. You don't have that ability, but you have the ability, even if you only spend 1 hour a day, to create the art specifications to hand to someone like Alex Preston, who could then turn it around and say, yeah, hey, cool. I can't draw, but I can communicate with Alexander Kostick well enough to get the art I got for A Dead Man's Guide, and with John Pintar, and with David Kegg and Jake Perez. So that's how I made Dragon Grin exist. I was incapable, and I hired you, not me personally, but Absolute Tabletop hired you, Jeff, and others, because I know that I don't know mechanics as well as you and Connor and Lloyd. So I hired you to do that part, to help me with that part. So that's it. If you want this game done in a year and a half, document as much of it as you can so that if you weren't there, someone could bring it to life, and then continue to learn as much as you can so that when you do deal and talk with these freelancers, you're on the level and you speak their language enough that they'll say, yeah, I'll take a risk with this guy. He seems like he's on the level. He seems like he's clear. He knows what he wants. He'll be easy to work with. So that's honestly more and more, and then I'll shut up. This is how things are made. More and more I'm realizing at a corporate level, when something needs to get made, the main obstacle is money. If the project is visioned out, if it's, hey, we need a website. Okay, great. You hire a web designer. Most people don't learn web development. They hire someone. So that's my advice.
All right, Jeff, rebuttal, 20 minutes. No. I said 20. I should have said 2, like a real debate. I don't know. Did you have anything you wanted to throw out there, Jeff? Did you, I don't know. I want to kind of know what you think about that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, that does always sort of open up the sort of like initial entry point, which is going to be money, which is like always going to be the great restrictor when it comes to anything like this, which I guess is like Kickstarter works, but Kickstarter only works if you have something you can put on it to show people like what it is, which at the very least is going to necessitate like, even if you're paying people to do mock-ups, you know, you're still having to hire people to do something, which is going to then require money before the Kickstarter happens. Even then, which I guess like, I don't think that there's an advice answer to that other than like, yep, that's what you have to do. So I'm not expecting necessarily anything to counteract that point, but yeah, it is the difficulty, you know, in terms of that. But I do think that, yeah, just, and I am going to keep developing my skills. Like I'm still learning Unity. I'm still learning C#. I'm still testing around with art and seeing what I can make with it and stuff like that. But yeah, the timetables of learning are not in our favor often when it comes to things of big scope.
Yeah.
So
Can I real quick, can I say something about the money and then throw it to you, James?
Yeah.
If you care enough about this project, start a small savings fund for it. And it could be, Jeff, $10 a month, but something that is, it's valuable enough for you to say, hey, I'm going to start putting money toward this. Because, I mean, everyone has different goals. So, like, this is how my wife and I, it seemed like a magical, we would never own a house. It was too much money. It was, like, fake. But over time, and there are other things that can come into play. Maybe you'll come into some money. I don't know. You never know. But it's a cool problem to have, that you have this thing that could be made tomorrow and all you need is money. That is different. If someone came to me today and was like, hey, I really want to produce a Dragon Grin TV show, I'm not ready. But if I was, I'd be like, sounds great. So anyway, that's all. With the money thing, I'm super with you. But that little savings fund, and you never know.
Yeah. So based on that, what I'll say specifically is, let's have this next conversation assuming that you are in a position where you don't have any money, right? I was young and I wanted to make a game and I had zero income, and that was simply not an option. I had to do it, right? The other thing is, let's also, for the sake of this conversation, the goal is not to create the thing necessarily. And I think we need to be on the same page about this. The goal is to learn how to create the thing so you can eventually create it. You are using the thing in that aim though, right? So consider that if you have an idea, you are either working on the idea or you're working on one implementation of the idea, but you're never making the idea. I don't know if that makes sense, but there's always a disconnect between what's in your head and what comes out. And what I mean to say by that is, sometimes you'll have an idea in your head and it'll be a short story. And then a month later, it'll be a comic. And then 2 years later, it'll be a TV show. And then eventually it's a one-man show you do on Broadway, right? You don't know now what the idea is going to be. So what we need to do is, just knowing that, look at every idea and go, okay, well, I'm going to work on this implementation of the idea. So first we set aside, okay, well, we don't have the pressure of, well, this is the only one, so it's got to be perfect. So we put that aside. Then we separate things like being a good artist from being a career artist. What I mean by that is, I'm not very good at making art, but I can become very proficient at using the programs to make the art and getting the right shape and making it go in the right place. And even if it's a bridge, I can now program my little character from this side of the bridge to go to that side of the bridge, right? Because I know there's a bridge scene. Really, what I've done is I've used my creative thing. I know there's a bridge scene because I'm excited about it. That's my motivation. And I went, okay, well, for this implementation, I'm going to make it a pixel and it's going to be a bridge. And okay, well, so, and this is literally what happens for me. I kind of do this at work, but I'm going to pretend I'm working on the game. I go, okay, what engine am I going to use? Okay, I can pick between Unity or Godot. Well, we've chosen Unity, right? Okay, well, that means I need to learn C#. Okay, all right, I'm going to look up a tutorial on how to do anything in Unity, which is what you did. It showed you how to do some stuff. When I'm learning something new, I do not try to learn about it. I try to learn as little as I can, because it means I'm only learning the things I need. And so what I do in that case to find how do I progress on this, I go, okay, well, I'm going to do something, right? Well, I downloaded Unity. All right, file new, right? I'm like, I have no idea what anything is, but that's what you did. You're like, okay. And then I alt-tab and I go to Google. I go, how do I do anything in Unity, right? Usually what I do is I find a tutorial kind of like you did, and you build it. And then you change it. Basically, what I need is I need the motivation and the ideas of what to do. Programming was very difficult for me to learn because I didn't know what to program. I didn't have projects to do. I didn't know I wanted to get stuff out of a database, so I never learned how to use one because I didn't have a problem that fit that constraint. It's almost like you just have to learn just enough to know what problems you can solve. And then I go, okay, well, in my game, that would be this. I need to learn how to do a main gameplay loop where every time 10 minutes passes, my life goes down 10. Well, I didn't come up with that unless I was like, oh, in this game, every 10 minutes, your life goes down by 10. How do I do that, right? Like, my biggest problem with learning something new is I need to have a problem I'm solving with it. If I'm just like reading a book about C#, it's like, it's nothing. You know what I mean? Sometimes I find myself reading a book and I'm like, okay, this is, I'm not here yet, whatever. So that's the main thing is with an abundance of effort and no money, you kind of do just have to start the extremely long journey of learning it, but by making sure that you're always doing it in a way that allows you to be motivated too. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah. So hopefully that makes sense. But the big thing there is the implementations being separate from the idea. The game you make tomorrow, you know, you may eventually make it in Unreal 7 when that comes out, you know, we don't know, but yeah.
And I do really, really appreciate that part of the advice. I mean, everything that both of you guys said was really great, but that part in particular, I think sort of struck a chord, which is like, I probably couldn't make this game in 6 months, but I could make a game based on that idea, you know, in 6 months, even if it's, you know, a game that lasts for 30 minutes, you know, and then it's over. Like that, I've still, you know, made the thing, and it's there. And then, like you say, you know, I've learned things along the way, and then I might make that same idea again later with the things that I've learned and do it better. Like I actually, I'm trying to remember, I think it was Dead Cells, which is a super great 2D platformer game. One of my favorites, fantastic game. But I was reading like a dev blog from one of the people who worked on it that was like, when we first like were making this game, it was going to be like a multiplayer fighting like a multiplayer tower defense game or something weird like that, like that it was supposed to be at first. And then we sort of made this like mock-up thing, and then we talked to one of our friends and was like, so the single player version of this is just more fun than the multiplayer version. You should just like do that. And they're like, okay, cool, we'll do that. And then suddenly they started adding stuff and changing stuff, and then suddenly like a couple years later down the line, it's become a 2D Metroidvania roguelike combat platformer. It's just like, what? like
they had no idea when they started.
Yeah. Well, and then something else too. I know, Jeff, you're into music, so hopefully this will help, like this analogy or this example. There is this interesting middle ground where if someone was like, hey, I want to start writing music, but they didn't play an instrument, they can pick up the guitar and say, well, here goes, bump, 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 and start doing that. But there are also audio loops. There are recorded loops of audio of various instrumentation that already exists, and I can take those loops of a drum, you know, say a kit that does a certain beat, and just drop that in. And then I can take guitars. And I don't need to know music to do that. I do have to be able to understand audio and what would sound good together, and maybe some stuff with keys and things. But I don't need to know how to play the guitar to drop a guitar into this particular song I'm writing, right? So I know I heard someone say, and I don't know how true it is because I'm not a programmer, but I heard someone say 75% of the software that exists is already doing the thing better. Like, you can take a piece that's been built for 75% of what you're doing and plug it into what you're trying to do. It's only about that 25% where you have to code something from scratch brand new because it doesn't exist. So I don't know how true that is, but I think in your case, maybe there is something as simple as going onto Steam and downloading one of those game makers. Now, you're still learning the coding on the side, but you are able to put something out. Like James said, in this example, the bridge in that scene, maybe it's a little more concrete because you drop in this little sprite that they have and this little bridge, and now you're seeing the game, and that's when you realize this isn't going to be a tower defense game. Now that I'm in here kind of messing around, it's a Metroidvania or whatever that is. The other thing is, I try to use any medium necessary to get a point across. So if the gameplay can't exist yet, I know you know how to use Adobe Premiere. So you could, or even After Effects maybe, you could take a pixel or a pixel art and animate what you want it to do. And even then, you're like, see, this is now a tangible example that goes in the folder. This is how I want the fighting to look. And then, these strange effects. And now, like James said, because I'm very much the same way. To me, if I'm solving a specific problem, I'll learn the thing. But I don't need to learn everything about music to know what chord I'm trying to use right now. So in this case, when I have that happen to me, that's what I consider when people say fake it till you make it. That's kind of what I think is the real useful version of fake it till you make it is learn what you need for the moment and then you put it in the toolbox. For you, maybe making an animated video of the game will help you say, okay, now how would I do that? How do I make this twist? And then you start, and you can even show people on Reddit, hey, how do I use C# to make this happen? Oh, we'll use this library. And now I'm using terms that I don't understand, but so I might be using the wrong vernacular. Worked. Yeah, but yeah, so in that case, maybe that's just making it exist in some form or use loops, quote unquote, by using a game maker.
Yeah, no, that's again, very, very advice. The things about very that maybe is that there are tons of asset packs that you can just buy and then just import of other people who have made games or just made game objects even. So maybe that's a starting point to look into. And something else that I should acknowledge about myself it's again, this is not advice. I think that maybe somebody else watching this might be the same way. So just to get some solidarity, I definitely suffer from a bit of one-man band syndrome when it comes to creative stuff like this, which is just and this is not just creative stuff like this, but all creative stuff. Just I'm the kind of person who's if I can theoretically learn how to do it myself, I would rather learn and do it myself, even if that means that I end up way over my head doing too many different things. I remember I was having a conversation with my singing teacher actually, because I mentioned I had bought an electronic drum kit because I wanted to learn drums because I didn't have any way to get drums on my music right now, because it was either that or program it in by hand, which is what I had been doing. And he's like, so you can do that. I just want to let you know, it's not normal for someone to say, I can't play drums, so I'm going to buy a drum set and learn to play it so I can put it on this song. That's, most people would just ask a drummer to play it, and that's fine. So again, I have no advice stemming from that, because I don't even know that the best advice is don't try to do it, because for me, that's part of the fun is learning this stuff and learning how to do it is part of the fun. But it does also restrict what I can do because I have to learn how to do it all. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there for other people who might be similar. because like my innate reaction when someone says like, oh well, you can just hire an artist to do that, it's like, but then I'm not doing it, but that I'm not doing, but I can't draw, but I'm not but then I'm not the one who's doing the art. And it's just like, in some sense, I probably don't have to be the one to do everything. And if I wanted to make something like very good and publicly accessible, like I probably would just need to hire people. But yeah, trying to balance that like innate sort of gut reaction of like, I want to do this, so I'm going to learn how to do every part of it so that I can do it, versus like, other people are better at all of these things than I am and will do it better than I will because they've dedicated their whole life to it, where I have dedicated 3 months to it. Yeah, again, I have no point to saying all that. I just wanted to say it because that's just a weird thing that I have, and other people might be like, oh, yep, someone else who has that struggle. I get it.
Yeah, I will say I feel very much the same way, but I feel like I can speak a little to what that is great for, which is it's great to try a lot of things because I am also not a great artist. I look forward to the day that I learn to draw because it would be, I think, silly to consider it the opposite way, right? I may never learn to draw, but I still look forward to the day that I do. I say that because that type of outlook allows you to try a lot of things. There are things that I've tried and went, yeah, that's not for me. I thought I'd love that. I didn't like it, but it took that 7 hours of making that thing to go, man, that was a slog and I'll never do that again, you know?
Yeah.
So in that sense, I love that because now investing in a drum set, right? Hopefully you're going to love playing the drums, but I have absolutely been in a situation where I was like, you know what? I see this thing. I really want to do that. And then I find that I'm like, you know, this is just, this is not what I thought. I thought this looked cool, but or like for me, I'm particularly bad at the drums. It seems pretty simple until you're like, oh, you have to be perfectly on beat? No, that's not this guy, right? It's like I have tried things out and had realizations where I'm like, whoa, but it's taught me the things I love and the things I don't love. I have a great affinity for board games, but I learned that by not playing them as much as learning everything I could about them and reading about them and playing them when I could, but I didn't let not being able to play board games stop me from loving them, if that makes sense, you know? And I didn't realize a long time ago that would eventually feed into what I'm doing now, you know? So it's like, I love that you're messing with C# and everything because it is finicky and a pain, but one day you might come across something and go, oh my gosh, I know a little bit of it. I can get into it because now I really need it for this thing. So there is just a really important aspect, especially that I want to say to other people, because Jeff, it sounds very much like you have that, but you have to make sure that a lot of the times you're creating that you realize you're creating something to release it and because you want to make money or get fame or whatever that is, or that you're creating something because that's the best way to learn how to create that thing, not necessarily for anyone else. And just those two different outlooks have helped me because that helps me make the bridge in the game not look good because I just want the satisfaction of knowing I could run over the bridge, blow it up, and then I fall in the hole, right? I programmed it right to do that, for example. There is nothing more satisfying than for me, than programming something and finally working and pressing the button and it moves and it does what you wanted. That's why I do it, even though sometimes I do that and I go, wow, that was a really frustrating process, but look, it does it when I press the button, you know? So some of it is just for the love of doing the thing and for the information of knowing you don't like to do it.
The other thing I was going to say, Jeff, and this is from personal experience, don't underestimate the feeling and the fun of what it feels like to provide a universal tempo for the orchestra. The conductor is so important. And there's a thing that happens in art direction. I'm the art director at Absolute Tabletop, and there's a thing that happens where only I know how I want it to look. And there is an interplay that feels like I'm drawing when I'm sketching things out and crossing things out and moving this eye over here and making this longer and no, the face is wrong. I don't want it to look, and so I get to have the fun of still feeling like I'm an artist without needing the full skill of an artist. I am conducting the orchestra. And so I think it can be a both and, like what James just said. And that's kind of what I meant when I said too, the more you learn, the more I can understand how to speak to an artist or why they might have made the choice that they made, because they say, hey, well, yeah, if you do it this way, these 3 things will actually be wrong later because of the colors that we're using and because of the angle of this. We can't do that. That's not how physics works. Or the, I start to learn more of, oh, that punching dagger that looks wrong because the handle is one way and the blade is the other, and that's not perspective. And I can now communicate that clearly. Hey, punching dagger looks great, but the perspective is wrong on the blade in relation to the handle. Can we tighten that up? So it's fun telling a drummer what to play and then having them do something you could never do, but only you could think of. So don't underestimate that either, and I think a both end for you would be cool.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the advice from both of you guys. It's very, very helpful things to think about and ways to start approaching all of this stuff. So yeah, I very much appreciated.
Great. When's the release date? No, maybe. I'm excited to see what happens, because even this conversation is a helpful thing for getting the game closer to completion. You know what I mean? Like, just talking about it in a lot of cases is just talking about it. But sometimes these kinds of conversations are what the next step is. So cool. Well, I guess let's I guess I should do a proper ending.
Yeah.
We're Tabletop Terrors. We're all about fun, creativity, and tabletop RPGs. We have a Patreon, and so if you're interested in some of the what we call chunks that we make, or if you're interested in learning about game design, it's definitely a Patreon for you. Comment below with your tips for Jeff. What did we miss? What are we wrong about? What are we right about? I would love to see Jeff's version of Hyper Light Drifter, and your comment might be the comment that pushes him over the edge and gets him to learn C#. So let's end things with a Tabtarian toast.
May you mend the first break.
May you kill the first snake.
May you conquer everything you undertake.
Slodge. You're already learning C#, so no comment is going to make you go back in time, decide you weren't going to learn it, and then learn it. And I thought that as I said it, and I thought, I'm not doing that again. Just leaving it in. So if your comment was the one that you thought was going to make Jeff learn C#, either you're a time traveler or it was in vain.